So we are in Genesis chapter 23 today. Now, 23 is actually a shorter chapter, and it deals with the death of Sarah. We're likely going to be able to go into chapter 24. And even though chapter 23 is a short chapter, 24 is a long chapter. However, the content of 24 goes rather quickly. And that's really the meeting of Isaac and Rebekah. So there's a good chance we might get through both chapters today, but we might not make it all through the whole chapter 24. But we're going to play it by ear and see how the time goes. At any rate, let's go ahead and turn to Genesis chapter 23. And let's start with our customary read through the text. So Genesis chapter 23, verse 1. Sarah lived to be 127 years old. She died at Kiriath Arba, that is, Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham went to mourn for Sarah and to weep over her. Then Abraham rose from beside his dead wife and spoke to the Hittites. He said, I am a foreigner and a stranger among you. Sell me some property for a burial site so that I can bury my dead. The Hittites replied to Abraham, Sir, listen to us. You are a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of us will refuse you his tomb for burying your dead. Then Abraham rose and bowed down before the people of the land, the Hittites. He said to them, if you are willing to let me bury my dead and listen to me and intercede with Ephron, son of Zohar, on my behalf, so he will sell me the cave of Machpelah, which belongs to him and is at the end of his field. Ask him to sell it to me for the full price as a burial site among you. Ephron the Hittite was sitting among his people and replied to Abraham in the hearing of all the Hittites who had come to the gate of his city. No, my lord, he said, listen to me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it. I give it to you in the presence of my people. Bury your dead. Again, Abraham bowed down before the people of the land and said to Ephron in their hearing, listen to me, if you will. I will pay the price of the field. Accept it from me so I can bury my dead there. Ephron answered, listen to me, my lord. The land is worth 400 shekels of silver. But what is that between you and me? Bury your dead. Abraham agreed to Ephron's terms and weighed out for him the price he had named in the hearing of the Hittites, 400 shekels of silver, according to the weight current among the merchants. So Ephron's field in Machpelah near Mamre, both the field and the cave in it and all the trees within the borders of the field, was deeded to Abraham as his property in the presence of all the Hittites who had come to the city, to the gate of the city. Afterward, Abraham buried his wife Sarah in the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre, which is at Hebron in the land of Canaan. So the field and the cave in it were deeded to Abraham by the Hittites as a burial site. That is chapter 23 and the story of the death of Sarah, and then Abraham wanting to have a place that he owned to use as a burial place for Sarah, and he probably planned to use it for himself, and he planned to use it for any of his other family. Why would Abraham need to do this? Because he was a foreigner in a strange land and he didn't own any property. He was still living on tents and he was still being allowed to live in Canaan, amongst the Canaanite people, but he didn't own any property himself. And this is kind of an interesting thing because remember how Abraham got there, right? God had promised to give him all of this land, but it hadn't happened yet. And why should you pay for something that you know you're going to be given? Well, that's true for Abraham in the longer sense, right? And how long did he wait for an heir? And God had promised Abraham an heir. And how long did he have to wait for the birth of Isaac? He waited 25 years. So he was still waiting for God to fulfill the part of his promises that gave him all of that land, the land that was currently owned by the Canaanites. And yet Sarah died, and out of respect for her, he wanted to have a cemetery, a funeral plot that nobody could question belonged to Abraham. And that's why he was insisting to pay for it, so that there was no question. And that's why he did this in a very public way. And we'll get into that as we start to take this apart. All right. So let's go ahead and go back up to the top to verse 1. Sarah lived to be 127 years old. So interesting that she was about 90 when she had Isaac. And so Isaac is now about 37 years old. That becomes important for the next chapter. Okay. So just remember that. Sarah dies at the age of 127. And she was 90 when Isaac was born, making Isaac about 37 years old. And she died at Kiriath Arba, which is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham went to mourn for Sarah and to weep over her. So now if Sarah is 127 years old, and Abraham is about 10 years older, he's now about 137 years old himself. So he's an old toad. He's an old toad. Getting close to the end of his life as well. And so he must have had that in his mind as well. I mean, he loved Sarah and he wanted to take care of her remains properly. And he probably also had in mind that he needed a spot to be buried near her. So she died at Kiriath Arba, which is Hebron, in the land of Canaan, and Abraham went to mourn for Sarah and to weep over her. Then he rose from beside his dead wife and spoke to the Hittites. So it's interesting that it mentions the Hittites. What do we know about the Hittites? Well, we know that the Hittites were actually a very sophisticated Canaanite civilization. And at the height of the Hittite civilization, it rivaled the Egyptians. There's even a mention of the Hittites speaking with the Egyptians during the 7 years of famine that Joseph helped the Pharaoh and the nation of Egypt to weather through. God had given Joseph insight into the coming 7-year famine and advised Pharaoh that they needed to build warehouses and start storing grain for when the famine came. And, I do a lot of work with Douglas County Emergency Management. And one of the things about emergency management, one of the axioms, is that it's impossible to plan for an emergency during an emergency. So in the emergency management world, you have the peacetime activities and you have the wartime activities. During wartime, quote unquote, there's a disaster that it's happened or there's some sort of incident, and you have to mitigate the incident. You have to protect life first and then property second and such and so forth. Wildland fire, floods, those kinds of things. And it's impossible to plan for an emergency during an emergency. So during the peacetime, when there's not a disaster going on, you're relationship building. You are stockpiling supplies. You are providing training in anticipation of a potential future disaster. Well, so what Joseph did, God gave Joseph insight into a future coming disaster, a famine, 7 years, a famine. And so Joseph advises Pharaoh that they need to, like I said, build warehouses and begin to store grain. Back to the Hittites. During the famine, this is a wide area famine, and it actually impacts Canaan and the Hittites. And the Hittites are starving. And the queen of the Hittites comes to the Pharaoh and begs for grain. That's the the interaction that we actually read in Scripture about the Hittites and the Egyptians. What we know historically is that the Hittites didn't survive the famine, even though the Egyptians agreed to help them out and provide some grain. It wasn't enough, and the Hittite kingdom actually ceased to exist. It stopped existing because of that 7 years of famine. But this is many years before. Okay, many years before. And Abraham is now interacting with the Hittites, who are the people living in the area, the Canaanite peoples living in the area of Hebron. And he is purposely doing this publicly because he wants everybody to know that he wants to purchase a plot of land to bury his family. So in those days, if you were going to do business, you did business at the city gate. And that's where Abraham is. So all of the city elders, all of the merchants and champions of business in that area would have been at the city gate because that's where business was done. So that's where Abraham goes. Verse 3, then Abraham rose from beside his dead wife and spoke to the Hittites. He said, I am a foreigner and a stranger among you. Sell me some property for a burial site so that I can bury my dead. The Hittites replied to Abraham, Sir, listen to us. You are a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of us will refuse you his tomb for burying your dead. So burying their dead was customary in tombs, was customary for the Hittites. Abraham had made such an impression on the Hittite people in the area of Hebron that they called him a prince. Not only did they call him a prince, they called him a mighty prince. And he had such a good reputation among them that the Hittite people collectively said, look, you can pick the choicest place wherever you want, whatever tomb you want, just take it. Just take it. No one will argue. No one will have a problem. So how does this happen? How does this foreigner moving into a strange land, how does he become a mighty prince among them and is so widely respected that they're willing to give him land? And he can choose whatever land he wants. And it's by being a good witness for the Lord. It's by being a generous and kind person. It's about caring for your neighbors. And Abraham did that. And he did it so well that everybody knew who Abraham was and everybody respected him. And they considered him to be a mighty prince among them. That's pretty special when you think about it, And when you think about how you want to be remembered, that's a great way to be remembered. He was a mighty prince among us. He was a great person. He helped his neighbors. He was very generous. He never said no unless he had a good reason to, those kinds of things. And that was who Abraham was. I would have liked to have known Abraham. And I look forward to actually meeting Abraham someday, right? Because he's in the abode of the Lord, or the bosom of Abraham, as it's called. And so someday I think we'll have a chance to meet Abraham. But he was not only obedient and faithful to God, but he was also a great person considered by others. You want to know what kind of person you are? Ask others, right? A lot of people have a high impression of themselves, but it's the people that surround them that really see what you're like. Well, the people around Abraham thought that he was a mighty prince. Verse 7, then Abraham rose and bowed down before the people of the land. So this again is still at the city gates, right? And he's showing his respect to the people, his appreciation for what they just said. So he bowed down before the people of the land, the Hittites. He said to them, if you're willing to let me bury my dead, listen to me and intercede with Ephron, son of Zohar, on my behalf. Why? So that he will sell me the cave of Machpelah, which belongs to him at the end of his field. So Abraham had done his research. Now, this is a very good business technique. Before you make a proposal, have your research done. So before Abraham got there, he had completed his research and he had found a spot that he would like. And that happened to be in a cave, that would work, in a field, at the end of a field that was owned by Ephron, son of Zohar. So he didn't know that Ephron was in this crowd of people, the Hittite people that were at the city gate. He didn't know. But he said to them, if you're willing to let me bury my dead, then listen to me and intercede with Ephron of Zohar on my behalf. So he found the cave, he had found the field, he had done the research to find out who owned it. And chances are he didn't know Ephron at this point, and he didn't know that Ephron was in the crowd. But he said, if what you say is true, if you respect me at all, intercede on my behalf with Ephron, son of Zohar, so that he will sell me the cave of Machpelah, which belongs to him and is at the end of his field. Ask him to sell it to me for full price as a burial site among you. Now, notice what Abraham isn't doing. He isn't looking for a deal. He's willing to pay full market price for this land. He wants it. There's no reason to haggle for it. And he says to the crowd, I'm willing to pay market price. I'm willing to pay full price. I'm not looking for a deal or a steal. I am certainly not looking for it to be given to me. Again, because he wants to own it. Why? So that there's no one that contests that that field and that cave belong to Abraham in perpetuity. Not for then, and not for in 10 years, and not for in 100 years, but for all time to come, that it would be recognized that that field and that cave belongs to Abraham. Ask him to sell it to me for full price as a burial site among you. Ephron the Hittite was sitting among his people, and he replied to Abraham in the hearing of all the Hittites who had come to the city, to the gate of the city. No, my lord, he said, listen to me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it. I give it to you in the presence of my people. So this is like, I'm transferring the deed now, right? I'm gonna get the paperwork drawn up right now, and I'm gonna give it to you. Then he says, bury your dead. So go ahead, the intended use. And this is kind of like, getting the zoning, right? So Abraham wanted them to know that he was wanting to purchase the land. That's one. Two, that he planned to use it as a burial site, right? So that it would have the proper zoning, that nobody would be upset that the land is being used as a burial site as opposed to being used as farmland or for grazing or for homesteading. His intended purpose, and he was being upfront about what his plans were, is it was going to be used as a burial ground. Verse 12, again, Abraham bowed down before the people of the land, and he said to Ephron in their hearing, listen to me if you will. I will pay the price of your field. Accept it from me so I can bury my dead there. Again, Abraham wanted to buy it. He wanted to pay for it. He didn't want it to be given to him. This is reminiscent of another situation that happens in about another 400 years, right? David goes to the top of Mount Moriah, and he meets the Jebusite that owns the threshing floor there, and he wants to purchase the threshing floor for the Lord. That spot in the future becomes Temple Mount. And because David's intention was to use the land to worship God, he wanted to pay for it, is the way to put it. He wanted to pay for it. The Jebusite who owned the threshing floor was willing to give it to him. You can have it, my king. But that's not what David wanted. That's not what David needed. He needed to pay for it. And he wasn't looking for a steal, and he wasn't looking for a deal. He just wanted to own that plot of land. Abraham is doing the same thing. I'm not looking for a steal, and I'm not looking for a deal. I just want to own that land. And I want it to be clear who owns that land. Verse 14, Ephron answered, and listen to me, my lord, the land is worth 400 shekels of silver. But what is that between you and me? Go ahead, bury your dead. Abraham agreed to Ephron's terms because now Ephron had, even though he was still trying to give him the land and the cave, Ephron had named a price. Now Abraham had something he could work with. Verse 16, Abraham agreed to Ephron's terms and weighed out for him the price he had named in the hearing of the Hittites, 400 shekels of silver according to the weight current among the merchants. Okay, so 400 shekels of silver, that's what Ephron mentioned. Abraham came prepared. He had the money in his pocket. He measured out the money, and he was prepared to give it to Ephron right there on the spot. Again, a business tactic. If you are going to go into a negotiation and you negotiate for best price, be prepared right there on the spot to pay for it. Not that, okay, in about 6 months, I'm going to have the money pulled together to be able to buy it at the terms that we agreed. Those kinds of deals often fall through. When Ephron had named his price, when they had come to an agreement, Abraham wanted to take advantage of it right now so that there would be complete clarity. It was done in front of the Hittites. It was a public transaction. Everybody saw what was going on. Everybody saw that it was a fair deal. Verse 17, so Ephron's field in Machpelah near Mamre, both the field and the cave in it, and all the trees within the borders of the field, was deeded to Abraham and his property in the presence of all the Hittites who had come to the city gate. Afterward, Abraham buried his wife in the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre, which is at Hebron, in the land of Canaan. So the field and the cave in it were deeded to Abraham by the Hittites as a burial site. So Abraham went into a transaction, went into a negotiation, wasn't looking for a deal or a steal. He paid the full price that Ephron said that the land was worth. He did it as a public transaction so that everybody would know. And then it was publicly deeded to Abraham so that everybody knew that Abraham now owned this field and the cave in it, and that Abraham's intended use, again, being upfront, was to use it as a burial ground, as a burial site. First for Sarah, then for himself, and then for his other family. So you have to ask a question, and that is, Abraham is a foreigner, he's from Mesopotamia, he's from Ur of the Chaldees. Why didn't he want to? And so was Sarah, right? Because remember, Sarah was actually the half-sister, so she's from there too. So why didn't Abraham want to take Sarah's body home and bury her in their hometown, where they were from? Because where they were from was not the land of promise. It was not the land that God had promised them. The land of the Canaanites was the land that God promised them. And Abraham was still waiting for the fulfillment for that to happen. And then you'll remember when last week when we looked at Genesis chapter 22 and the sacrifice of Isaac. And I asked the question, did Abraham, did he know about the gospel? Did he know about the future coming of Messiah? Did he know about the crucifixion and the resurrection? And we concluded that he did. Jesus said that Abraham saw him, the story of Jesus, and he was glad in it. So what does Abraham know? Abraham is looking forward to the future resurrection when Messiah comes, and he's going to see Sarah again in the future resurrection, and his family are going to participate in this future resurrection when Messiah comes. And they want to be in the promised land. So therefore, Abraham can't just take land, and he can't just have it given to him because somebody could in the future take it back. It needs to belong to him, and it needs to be publicly understood that it belongs to him, because his intention was to be there, his remains, Sarah's remains, his family remains, in perpetuity, as long as it would take to be in the promised land for the future coming of Messiah and the resurrection. Let's turn to the book of John, and we are headed to chapter 14. John 14, and we're going to start at verse 1. John 14, verse 1. Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. My Father's house has many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you that I am going to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you with me, that you also may be where I am. You know the way to the place where I am going. Well, it's pretty clear that Jesus is talking about the future and spending eternity with him and with his Father. Verse 2, my Father's house has many rooms. Other translations say many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you that I am going to prepare a place for you. So what does Abraham know? Abraham knows that at some point there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth. And earth was originally created as the best and perfect place for human beings. That does not change in eternity. We are already standing on what is going to be our future abode. But it's going to become a new earth. That at that point when God eradicates sin from the universe, the heavens and the earth get burned over. And they get reborn. All sin is gone. There are no seas. And God provides all the light. There's no need for a sun and there's no need for a moon, because God provides all the light that is ever needed. But we are still standing on this same terra firma. And Abraham wanted to be there. That's what's going on here. And that's what Jesus is talking about. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will call you again unto myself. God has big plans for this earth. He can't use it as it is, because just as we have fallen, so is the earth fallen. And so is heaven, right? Because when Satan became proud, sin entered the universe. That's why the heavens and the earth have to be burned over. And there will be a new heaven and a new earth, because sin is completely eradicated. It is no longer a part of the fabric of our universe and of our planet. Any thoughts or comments before we move on from Genesis chapter 23? All right, if there's no comments, then let's roll right into Genesis 24. Now, stay with me. It's a little bit of a long chapter, but the context or the subject matter goes rather quickly. Let's do our read through. Genesis chapter 24, verse 1. Abraham was now very old, and the Lord had blessed him in every way. He said to the senior servant in his household, the one in charge of all that he had, put your hand under my thigh. I want you to swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you will not get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I am living, but will go to my country and my own relatives and get a wife for my son Isaac. The servant asked him, what if the woman is unwilling to come back with me to this land? Shall I then take your son back to the country you came from? Make sure that you do not take my son back there, Abraham said. The Lord, the God of heaven, who brought me out of my father's household and my native land, and promised me on an oath, saying, to your offspring I will give this land. He will send his angel before you so that you can get a wife for my son from there. If the woman is unwilling to come back with you, then you will be released from this oath of mine. Only do not take my son back there. So the servant put his hand under the thigh of his master Abraham and swore an oath to him concerning this matter. Then the servant left, taking with him 10 of his master's camels loaded with all kinds of goods from his master. He set out for Aram Naharaim and made his way to the town of Nahor. He had the camels kneel down near the well outside the town. It was toward evening, the time the women go out to draw water. Then he prayed, Lord, God of my master Abraham, make me successful today and show kindness to my master Abraham. See, I am standing beside this spring, and the daughters of the townspeople are coming out to draw water. May it be that when I say to a young woman, please let down your jar that I may have a drink, and she says, drink, and I'll water your camels too. Let her be the one you have chosen for your servant Isaac. By this I will know you have shown kindness to my master. Before he had finished praying, Rebekah came out with a jar on her shoulder. She was the daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah, who was the wife of Abraham's brother Nahor. The woman was very beautiful, a virgin. No man had ever slept with her. She went down to the spring, filled her jar, and came up again. The servant hurried to meet her and said, please give me a drink of water from your jar. Drink, my lord, she said, and quickly lowered the jar to her hands to give him a drink. After she had given him a drink, she said, I'll draw water for your camels too, until they have had enough to drink. So she quickly emptied her jar into the trough, ran back to the well to draw more water, and drew enough water for all his camels. Without saying a word, the man watched her closely to learn whether or not the Lord had made his journey successful. When the camels had finished drinking, the man took out a gold nose ring weighing a beka and 2 gold bracelets weighing 10 shekels. Then he asked, whose daughter are you? Please tell me, is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night? She answered him, I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, bore to Nahor. And she added, we have plenty of straw and fodder, as well as room for you to spend the night. Then the man bowed down and worshipped the Lord, saying, praise be to the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who has not abandoned his kindness and faithfulness to my master. As for me, the Lord has led me on a journey to the house of my master's relatives. The young woman ran and told her mother's household about these things. Now Rebekah had a brother named Laban, and he hurried out to the man at the spring. As soon as he had seen the nose ring and the bracelets on his sister's arms, he had heard Rebekah tell what the man said to her, and he went out to the man and found him standing by the camels near the spring. Come, you who are blessed by the Lord, he said, why are you standing out here? I have prepared the house and a place for your camels. So the man went to the house, and the camels were unloaded. Straw and fodder were brought to the camels, and water for him and his men to wash their feet. The food was set before him, and he said, I will not eat until I have told you what I have to say. Then tell us, Laban said. So he said, I am Abraham's servant. The Lord has blessed my master abundantly, and he has become wealthy. He has given him sheep and cattle, silver and gold, male and female servants, and camels and donkeys. My master's wife Sarah has borne him a son in her old age, and he has given him everything he owns. And my master made me swear an oath and said, you must get a wife for my son from the you must get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites in whose land I live, but go to my father's family and to my own clan and get a wife for my son. Then I asked my master, what if the woman will not come back with me? He replied, the Lord before whom I have walked faithfully will send an angel with you to make your journey a success, so that you can get a wife for my son from my own clan and from my father's family. You will be released from my oath if, when you go to my clan, they refuse to give her to you. Then you will be released from my oath. When I came to the spring today, I said, Lord God of my master Abraham, if you will, please grant success to the journey on which I have come. See, I am standing beside this spring. If a young woman comes out to draw water, I shall say to her, please let me drink a little water from your jar. And if she says to me, drink, and I'll drink water for your drink, and I'll draw water for your camels too. Let her be the one the Lord has chosen for my master's son. Before I finished praying in my heart, Rebekah came out, and her jar was on her shoulder. She went down to the spring and drew water, and I said to her, please give me a drink. She quickly lowered her jar from her shoulder and said, drink, and I'll water your camels too. So I drank, and she watered the camels also. I asked her, whose daughter are you? She said, the daughter of Bethuel, son of Nahor, whom Milcah bore to him. Then I put the ring in her nose and the bracelets on her arm, and I bowed down and I worshiped the Lord. I praised the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who had led me on the right road to the granddaughter of my master's brother for his son. Now, if you will show kindness and faithfulness to my master, tell me, and if not, tell me, so I may know which way to turn. Laban and Bethuel answered, this is from the Lord. We can say nothing to you one way or the other. Here is Rebekah. Take her and go, and let her become the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has directed. When Abraham's servant heard what they said, he bowed down to the ground before the Lord. Then the servant brought out gold and silver jewelry and articles of clothing and gave them to Rebekah, and also gave costly gifts to the brother and to her mother. Then he and the men who were with him ate and drank and spent the night there. When they got up the next morning, he said, send me on my way to my master. But her brother and mother replied, let the young woman remain with us 10 days or so, then you may go. But he said to them, do not detain me. Now the Lord has granted me success to my journey. Send me on my way that I may go to my master. Then they said, let's call the young woman and ask her about it. So they called Rebekah and asked her, will you go with this man? I will go, she said. So they sent their sister Rebekah on her way, along with her nurse and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, our sister, may you increase to thousands upon thousands. May your offspring possess the cities of their enemies. Then Rebekah and her attendants got ready and mounted the camels and went back with the man. So the servant took Rebekah and left. Now Isaac had come from Beer Lahai Roi, for he was living in the Negev. He went out to the field one evening to meditate, and as he looked up, he saw camels approaching. Rebekah also looked up and saw Isaac. She got down from the camel, and she asked the servant, who is that man in the field coming to meet us? He is my master, the servant answered. So she took her veil and covered herself. Then the servant told Isaac all he had done. Isaac brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah, and he married Rebekah. So she became his wife, and he loved her. And Isaac was comforted after after his mother's death. All right, so like I said, it's a long chapter, but it's a good chapter. It's actually an awesome chapter. All right, let's go back up to the top and let's start to unpack this, because there's a lot here. I mean, it's a pretty amazing chapter. It's a very special chapter in the Bible, and it really talks about the marriage, the love affair between Isaac and Rebekah. Again, remember that when Sarah died, she was 127 years old, which makes Isaac about 37, right? So he definitely needs a wife. And Abraham knows that he's not long for this world. He's an old toad. He's now about 137 years old. And before he dies, he wants to make sure that Isaac has a wife, that he's taken care of, and that Abraham has done what he can to position his family for the fulfillment of God's promise. That it's obvious that Abraham is not going to see the fulfillment of millions and millions of people being blessed through him and the establishment of a nation. He's not going to see it during his lifetime, that this is something in the future. So he needs to do what he can to make sure that God can fulfill his promise through his family line. Back up to verse 1. Chapter 24, verse 1. Abraham was now very old, and the Lord had blessed him in every way. I like that when you think about that. The Lord had blessed him in every way that you could think of. Monetarily, he had blessed him with happiness. He had blessed him with joy. He had blessed him with success. He blessed him in every way, including his reputation. Remember, he was a mighty prince among the Hittites. Verse 2. He said to the senior servant in his house, the one in charge of all that he had, "Put your hand under my thigh." A couple things going on here. I want you to notice that in this entire chapter, Abraham's senior servant is never mentioned by name. That's important. Now, back in Genesis chapter 15, Abraham, when he's telling God that the biggest concern he has on his heart right now is that he doesn't have an heir. And according to secular law, Code of Hammurabi, in Abraham's time, he would have had to leave his entire estate to his senior servant, and he names him Eliezer. So it's possible that we know who this senior servant is, but notice the senior servant is never mentioned by name in this chapter. I'll tell you why that's important later. He said to the senior servant in his household, the one in charge of all he had, "Put your hand under my thigh." To us, this seems very strange. I don't even want to touch another guy, right? I don't even like hugging another guy. So why would I put my hand under his thigh? Because in that day, in that time, this is how you made an oath to a person. This is how, when you made a promise, you showed visibly how you meant it. Put your hand under my thigh. So Abraham wants to impress upon his senior servant the importance of what he's asking him to do. And it's likely that this is Abraham's last act before passing from this life. And he wants to make sure that it gets done. Verse 3. I want you to swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you will not get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I am living, but will go to my country and my own relatives and get a wife for my son Isaac. Now, I thought that was kind of strange, right? Because, I'm sure that there were plenty of good-looking and available Canaanite women. But Abraham doesn't want that, doesn't want the wife for his son Isaac to come from the locals. Instead, he's instructing his head servant, his chief servant, to go back to his hometown, to go back to his family, to find a wife for Isaac. So why would that matter? Because Abraham knows that the Canaanite people aren't part of the promise. And if you remember what happens later, some 500 years later approximately, right? Joseph is taken to Egypt. And later, when Joseph becomes great, he brings his family to Egypt. And then that starts eventually this cycle that ends up with the Hebrew people being slaves to the Egyptians and the need for Moses to deliver God's people out of the land of Egypt and bring them back to the promised land, where Abraham is now. And what do they do then? They eradicate the Canaanite people out of the land through the military campaigns of General Joshua. Abraham knows all this is going to happen. And so he doesn't want Isaac's wife to come from the local people because they are not part of the promise. So he makes the servant swear that he'll go back to Mesopotamia, back to where Abraham's family is from, to find a suitable wife for his son. Verse 5, the servant asked him, "What if the woman is unwilling to come back with me to this land? Shall I then take your son back to the country you came from?" And he's meaning, so what if I travel all the way back to Mesopotamia and there isn't any woman that wants to be Isaac's wife and be brought back to this land, to leave her home and come back to this land that you're in? What then? Should I take Isaac with me so that they can meet this young man, that they can see that he is handsome, that they can see that he's strong and strapping, that I'm not trying to pull the wool over their eyes? I mean, it's really kind of a tall thing to ask Abraham, sight unseen, to ask a young woman to come back with me to marry your son, and she's never met him. That's really kind of a lot to ask, don't you think? So what do I do? I want to be faithful to your direction. I want to be obedient to what you're asking. I want to live up to what you're making me swear to. Well, what if I can't? What then? Verse 6, make sure that you do not take my son back there, Abraham said. The Lord, the God of heaven, who brought me out of my father's household and my native land, who has spoke to me and promised me on oath, saying, to your offspring, I will give this land. He will send his angel before you so that you can get a wife for my son there. So what is Abraham saying? He's saying, don't take Isaac back there, because that's not the land of promise. This is the land of promise. It hasn't happened yet. God swore to me on an oath that he would live up to his promise. And so Isaac needs to be here, not there. He needs to be here. And maybe there was a slight concern that if Isaac went back to Mesopotamia, he would not come back to the land of promise. So Abraham tells his servant, do not take my son back there. If you're unsuccessful in finding a wife for my son there, if there's no one willing to come with you back here, do not take my son there. Verse 8, if the woman is unwilling to come back with you, then you will be released from this oath of mine. So he gives them an escape clause. An escape clause in the oath. If the woman is unwilling to come back with you, then you will be released from this oath of mine. Only do not take my son back there. So the servant put his hand under the thigh of his master, Abraham, and swore an oath to him concerning this matter. So now the head servant, the chief servant, now he says, these terms are acceptable. I can live by this. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make that oath that you're asking me to make. Verse 10, then the servant left, taking with him 10 of the master's camels with all kinds of goods from his master. Now you think about it, right? It's like, there's a couple of things here, right? So why not 10 donkeys? Well, because camels cost more than donkeys. We have friends who have a farm in Franktown, and she's very much into rescuing farm animals. So when they hear of an abandoned animal, they will, figure out how they can get them, it cost them some money, and bring them to their farm. I don't know how long they can do that because it's not a very big farm, but that's what they've done. Recently, a man who had some pretty exotic animals died, and leaving these animals stranded, and among them was a camel. And that camel sold for $15,000. Camels are worth more than donkeys. Plus, they're known as the ships of the desert. Although they're not fun to ride, they're not easy to ride. They're considered the ships of the desert because they can carry a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. So I think it was probably quite an interesting convoy to see. Abraham's chief servant, along with others, and then a caravan of 10 camels, loaded with stuff, loaded with things, gifts and such from Abraham. Then the servant left, taking with him 10 of his master's camels, loaded with all kinds of good things from his master. He set out for Aram Naharaim, which is the northwestern part of Mesopotamia. He had the camels kneel down near the well outside the town. So this is a short, in one sentence, he completes his journey from Hebron over to Mesopotamia. This would have taken a while. But when he gets there, what does he do? He takes them to the well that supports the town. And made his way to the town of Nahor. He had the camels kneel down near the well outside the town. It was toward evening, the time that women go out to draw water. Then he prayed, Lord, God of my master Abraham, make me successful today and show kindness to my master Abraham. See, I am standing beside the spring, and the daughters of the townspeople are coming out to draw water. May it be that when I say to a young woman, please let down your jar that I may have a drink, and she says, drink, and I'll water your camels too. Let her be the one you have chosen for your servant Isaac. By this I will know that you have shown kindness to my master. So what the servant does is he lays down a fleece, as it were, like Gideon before the Lord. He says, Lord, help me out here. Help me to be successful for my master. Help me, guide me, assist me in completing the mission I have been given. When I ask for water from a young woman, and she gives me a drink, have her as a sign that I'm on the right track. Have her tell me that she'll give me a drink, and not only that, she'll water my camels too. What kind of test is this? How many camels were there? 10. It's not a short task to water 10 camels. In other words, no one would offer to do that by accident or just because. In the servant's mind, it would have required a clear intervention of God. Not so much that he would be offered to drink, but without asking, that this woman would offer to also water 10 camels. Now look what he does. Before he had finished praying, so he was still in the process of talking to God about this. God, I need your help here. Please help me be successful in my mission. He had not even finished praying when Rebekah came out with a jar on her shoulder. She was the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, who was the wife of Abraham's brother Nahor. Amazing. That was the woman. Remember, Abraham said that God will send an angel ahead of you to prepare my family, to get this ready. There are no accidents with God. None. Just by chance. I think the servant, he's seeing, is there with the 10 camels, and he's looking at the activity. He's seeing all of the young women, which was the custom at the time. It's the women that actually had to go and get the water. They waited until the cool of the day, right? So, the afternoon has passed and the sun is starting to set and the temperature is starting to drop. No one draws water when the sun is at its high point of the day. When it's at its hottest, everybody waits until it starts to cool down. And all the women are coming out to get water, to draw water for their families. And here is Rebekah, and he sees this beautiful woman. And the servant, he runs up to probably the best looking woman in the crowd. And he says to her, bring down your jar so that I can have a drink. Before he had finished praying, Rebekah came out with her jar on her shoulder. She was the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, who was the wife of Abraham's brother Nahor. The woman was very beautiful, a virgin. No man had ever slept with her. She went down to the spring, filled her jar, and came back up. The servant hurried to meet her and said, please give me a little water from your jar. She says, drink, my lord, and quickly lowered the jar to her hands and gave him a drink. Verse 19, after she had given him a drink, so now he's shut up. He's being quiet to see what happens next. After she had given him a drink, she said, I'll draw water for your camels too, until they have had enough to drink. So she quickly emptied her jar into the trough, ran back to the well to draw more water, and drew enough for all the camels. How many camels? 10. Not 1, not 2, 10. She made several trips to the spring and back to water the servants' camels. Again, nobody would offer to do that. Not by accident. Without saying a word, the man watched her closely to learn whether or not the Lord had made his journey successful. So he just sat there and watched this whole thing unfold. And when the camels had finished drinking, the man took out a gold nose ring weighing a beka, which is about 1/5 of an ounce, and 2 gold bracelets weighing 10 shekels. And then he asked, whose daughter are you? Please tell me. Is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night? Notice he asks 2 questions before waiting for an answer, before waiting for a response. Then he asked, whose daughter are you? Please tell me. I think he's a little anxious. I think that, inside he's getting excited to say, she's it. She's beautiful. And she passed the test. Whose daughter are you? And is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night? Because the servant at this moment didn't know where they were going to sleep that night. They had just completed a very long journey and they were tired, so they needed rest. Both he and the camels. 24, she answered him, I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, bore to Nahor. And she added, we have plenty of straw and fodder as well as room for you to spend the night. Then the man bowed down and he worshiped the Lord right then and there. He didn't wait until he had a quiet moment later that evening. No, right then and there he bowed down and he worshiped the Lord. you've done it, God. You've brought me to the right place, to the right family, and to the right person. You are an amazing God, the God of my master Abraham. Praise be the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who has not abandoned his kindness and faithfulness to my master. As for me, the Lord has led me on a journey to the house of my master's relatives. The young woman ran and told her mother's household about these things. Now Rebekah had a brother named Laban, and he hurried out to the man at the spring. As soon as he had seen the nose ring and the bracelets on his sister's arms, he had heard Rebekah and what the man said to her. He went out to the man and found him standing near the camels near the spring. Laban saw somebody might be worth something. Laban saw the material side of what was going on, and it was attractive. Come, you who are blessed by the Lord, he said, why are you standing out here? Why are you waiting? I've prepared the house and a place for your camels. So the man went to the house, and the camels were unloaded. Straw and fodder were brought to the camels, and water for him and his men to wash their feet. Then food was set before them. But he said, I will not eat until I have told you what I have to say. Well, I'm looking at our time, and we are really out of time for today, and this is a good place to stop. But I want to make the point. The servant is still unnamed. When he has to tell someone who he is, he says, I am the servant of my master Abraham. He complete the journey. He lays the test before God. God brings Rebekah to the servant. She gives him a drink. She waters all the camels. They meet Laban. Laban says, what are you waiting for? We're all ready for you. Come on, come on, come on. They feed the camels. They feed the servants. And then the next thing to happen is that the servant says, I've got to tell you why I'm here. Before we eat, I appreciate this food. I appreciate this feast that you've laid before us. But before I can eat, I've got to tell you why I'm here. And this is where we'll pick up next week. Any comments or questions before we close today?
Hey, Perry, back on verse 10, when my Bible says to the city of Nahor, the city is not Nahor, the city is Haran, right? It's just where Nahor lives.
Correct. It was where his brother Nahor lived. Yes. Right. Okay. Yep. All right, gentlemen, thanks for being here today. Please have a good rest of your week and go with God.
Thank you, Perry.
Thanks, Perry.